Clean the house now. No rest for the help. That's what Jack shouted, throwing beer on me. Caught off guard by the sudden action, I froze. I was drenched and the strong scent of beer filled my nostrils. Jack continued to hurl abusive words at me. What should I do? What does Jack want from me? Overwhelmed, I was at a loss for words when suddenly, from the computer, I heard a familiar voice. Upon hearing it, Jack, who was red with anger just moments ago, stiffened and collapsed on the spot. My name is Susan Miller. I'm 33 years old. I worked as a secretary in a company in Kansas, putting in my best every day. Every day was filled with crunching numbers and going through heaps of documents. I often thought I should be using the computer more, but being among the younger employees, I didn't have much say. Always trying to please my superiors and being forced into after-work drinks I had no interest in attending. My spirit was utterly worn out. This number here is wrong again. I'm sorry. Please be careful. You've been making a lot of mistakes lately. Yes. Perhaps due to the exhaustion, my mistakes became more frequent, and my already dwindling confidence in my work diminished further. Maybe I'd be better off quitting. That's what I was thinking, when a man started coming to our company for sales. This man, who later became my husband, was named Jack Miller. Just at a glance, it was clear that Jack was a kind man. Even to someone like me, who just served tea, Jack was always kind. I found myself gradually drawn to him. However, I couldn't express my feelings to Jack. After all, I was the one who had feelings for him, and I assumed he probably didn't feel the same way about me. That's what I believed. But a few months after Jack began visiting the company, he made a move. We started going out for drinks after work, and our relationship blossomed from there. After dating for 2 years, we tied the knot. I quit my job upon getting married, and Jack and I began our new life in a home we both loved. We had visited several real estate agents to find a home we both agreed upon. Having left my job, I thought I'd lead a happy life with Jack from now on. The mere thought of it filled my heart with joy. However, the life I imagined was not to be. About a month after our wedding, I noticed a change in Jack. Welcome home, Jack. You're home early today. Yeah, kinda. He didn't even look at me, and there was no usual greeting. Seeing Jack act so differently, I couldn't help but feel concerned. Jack continued to seem downcast. Are you okay? You seem tired. Huh? Oh, yeah. He seemed not just tired, but perhaps irritated. Something was definitely off about him. Maybe he's just had a long day, I thought, and tried not to dwell on it too much. However, the next day, and the day after that, Jack's demeanor remained unchanged. Gradually, it wasn't just his attitude or greetings. He stopped taking the lunch I prepared for him, and he stopped informing me when he would be coming home late. I could tell he was starting to treat me with indifference. Did I do something to upset Jack? Time flew by as these thoughts occupied my mind. I was consumed with insecurity about my actions and concern for Jack. The situation took a turn a few months after Jack's change in behavior began. Suddenly, he started lashing out at me with harsh words. One evening at dinner, Jack spoke up without touching his food. Hey, Susan. You realize it? Realize what? How could I know what he meant when he didn't specify? I urged Jack to explain further. Nonchalantly, he said, that your cooking sucks. What? It's bad? Yeah. You didn't even realize? Think about how I feel, having to eat this terrible food every day. I've cooked for him many times since we were dating, and he never once complained. He always ate with enthusiasm and often told me how delicious it was. Seeing him enjoy my cooking so much, it never crossed my mind that he would find it distasteful. But you always said it was good. Did I? Don't remember that. Seeing my worried expression, Jack burst out laughing. After a hearty laugh, he set down his utensils and retired to the bedroom. Looking at the untouched food, I felt indescribable emotions. I too put down my utensils, replaying Jack's words in my mind. Had he been pretending to like my cooking all along? Or had my cooking skills deteriorated? No matter how much I pondered, I couldn't find a satisfying answer. But one thing became clear to me. Considering his recent behavior and the words he just said, it seemed Jack had grown to dislike me. Initially, I thought he might just be tired, but his recent behavior was way over the top. The old Jack would have told me if he was feeling worn out. It must be true. But then, that would mean I did something to make Jack despise me. Yet, I couldn't think of anything. My doubts about Jack kept mounting. 2 more months passed. Jack's behavior deteriorated day by day, and the kind-hearted man I fell in love with was nowhere to be found. He hurled insults at me almost daily and made it very clear through his actions and noises that he was irritated. You know. Can't you even clean properly? What? Clean? Yeah. The bathroom, the toilet, none of them are clean. The living room is a mess too. I always want to keep the house clean, so I clean the bathroom and toilet almost every day. I even vacuum daily. What more does Jack want? I don't understand. Even as I was downtrodden, Jack continued to berate me. Of all the things he said, the one that hurt the most was, "Why did I even marry a woman like you?" Were all his previous expressions of love just lies? The moment that thought crossed my mind, I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. Ugh, why are you crying? Cut the fake tears. In the past, he would have comforted me, but now all he does is hurl insults. Laughing at me, Jack returned to our bedroom. Initially, we shared the bedroom. Now, I've been relegated to the couch. I had gotten used to sleeping in the living room. I was aware that Jack was taking me for granted and not valuing me. But I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce. I still believed in Jack. However, Jack's treatment of me continued to worsen daily. "Hey! Food!" he'd demand, only to complain. "I can't eat this crap." I'd suggested dining out occasionally, but for some reason, Jack vehemently opposed it. And he wouldn't tell me why. He'd return from work, complain about the house, and then demand dinner. Ever since his attitude started to change, I'd often found myself pondering what I did wrong. Observing Jack's recent behavior, I concluded he was simply venting his stress on me. The contradictions between his words and actions, and his consistent tendency to lash out and complain, made it all too clear. I get that Jack might be worn out from work. But hey, I'm human too. Endlessly being on the receiving end of criticism, I too am accumulating stress. I had once wished he'd switch places with me to understand, but I was already at my breaking point. "Hey, Jack. Can you stop already?" I mustered up the courage to talk to him. "I don't know if it's because you're tired from work, but can you stop taking it out on me? I mean, I deal with your complaints every day and it's stressing me out too." Jack looked at me, aghast. "What are you talking about?" "That's exactly what I mean. Right when you come home, you just start with the complaints. I'm trying my best, you know?" Jack half laughed at my words. But as soon as I finished talking, his face turned beet red with anger. "You know, listening to you, who do you think you are?" "What?" "Just a housewife, and you can't even clean properly or cook decent meals. Why shouldn't I complain? You live so carefreely. That's what ticks me off." "Well, why don't you tell me what's wrong? If you do, I'll try to fix it." "No, I won't. I can see that even if I tell you, you won't change. You figure out what's wrong." Even when I asked what I could improve on, Jack just avoided the question. From this conversation alone, it was evident that Jack viewed me as nothing more than a stress relief outlet. Expressing my feelings to Jack only made our relationship deteriorate further. His verbal abuses became more severe, and his attitude even colder. Remembering our happier days, I'd often sigh. In the midst of this life, one day, I received an unexpected call. It was from my mother-in-law. We had a good relationship, but rarely spoke on the phone, so I quickly picked up. Hello? Oh, Susan. How have you been? Her voice was cheerful over the phone. After some small talk, she got to the main point. Oh, handcrafting? Yes. I was thinking of picking up a new hobby and remembered you're into handcrafting. I was hoping you could teach me a few things. Actually, handcrafting was a hobby of mine. I'd buy materials and tools and spend my free time, especially when Jack wasn't around, crafting. I once mentioned it to my mother-in-law, but never thought she'd remember. Oh, of course. I'd be happy to help. From that call, I began to talk with her frequently. Not just regular calls, but video calls. Initially, we only had voice calls, but as we wanted to show each other our work and explain materials in detail, we switched to video. Her house wasn't too far, but constantly visiting would be a hassle. So, when it was our designated crafting time, I'd go into my crafting room and we'd craft together while on call. My heart, which had been tormented by Jack's actions, felt somewhat purified during these chats with her. By the way, how have things been with Jack recently? Everything okay? Yes. That's good to hear. I never spoke to her about the issues with Jack. I didn't want to worry her, and more than anything, I wanted to forget about him during our time together. Even after I began video calling with my mother-in-law, Jack's attitude remained as terrible as ever. I was desperately trying to keep my mother-in-law from realizing just how awful Jack was being. But then, one day, something happened. It was a Saturday, a few weeks after I'd started the video calls with my mother-in-law. I was in the middle of a call with her, having finished my housework as usual, when suddenly the door swung open. Jack. Turning around, there he stood near the door, holding something, seemingly oblivious to the ongoing video call. He sneered, approaching me. What are you doing, sneaking around in here? Where's the cleaning? The laundry? Why haven't you done them? I've already done them. You saw me, didn't you? What? I wasn't watching. Well, he had been glued to the TV in the living room, so that response was expected. You're always watching TV, that's why. What? Shut up. Growing even angrier at my words, Jack shouted. Clean the house now. You're basically my maid. No rest for you. And splashed the liquid he was holding onto me. I instantly recognized the smell. Beer. My clothes clung to me, sticky and smelling of alcohol. And there was Jack, laughing at me. The shock left me speechless. Get to work now. With that, he kicked over a stack of books nearby. His mocking laughter echoing throughout the room. I was paralyzed, watching the beer-soaked pages of the books. Then, from the computer came a familiar male voice. Is that all you have to say? Dad? Yes. It was Jack's father. My father-in-law. Jack. What on earth are you doing? I saw everything. How could you verbally abuse Susan and then drench her in beer? When did you become this monster? No, Dad, it's not what you think. Jack, who had been so aggressive moments before, was now clearly terrified. Despite his son's pleas, my father-in-law's fury didn't wane. What do you mean, it's not what I think? It's obvious this wasn't the first time, right? Well. When did you start acting like this, Jack? My father-in-law seemed deeply disappointed, and understandably so. Seeing his own son behave this way must have been shocking. Ignoring Jack's attempts to explain, my father-in-law turned to me with an offer. Susan, do you want to come over to our place right now? Now? Yes. I don't feel comfortable leaving you there with him. If you're okay with it, I'll come get you right away. I was taken aback by his sudden invitation. But thinking it over, I couldn't predict what Jack might do next. Is that okay with you? Absolutely. Wait for me. And Jack, if you do anything to her, you'll answer to me. With that, he ended the call. I quickly packed a bag and waited by the front door for my in-laws to arrive. Jack was pacing nervously, but he didn't harm me. A few minutes later, my in-laws showed up, and I headed to their home. The moment my father-in-law opened the door, I could see the fear in Jack's eyes. He was truly terrified of his own father. "Jack, reflect on your actions tonight, alone. Understand?" "Dad, I'm sorry, What are you babbling about? Your apologies should be directed at Susan, not me. Just reflect on your behavior. Got it?" With that, my father-in-law ushered me out of the house. I had changed my clothes, but I hadn't had the chance to shower. Wrapping a towel around me, he gently led me to his car. Minutes later, we arrived at my in-laws' house, where my mother-in-law was waiting. "Susan, are you okay?" "Yes. Thank you." She hugged me gently and guided me to the bathroom. "Take your time. Fresh clothes and towels are here for you." "Thank you." Everything had happened so quickly, my mind was still reeling. After the shower, I changed into the clothes they'd provided and headed to the living room. "Thank you for the shower." "No worries." Both my father-in-law, with his stern face, and my concerned-looking mother-in-law were seated on the sofa. Urged by my mother-in-law, I sat down. "Susan, can you tell us everything that's been going on?" It wasn't the first time, was it?" "Well, please, Susan." Lost for words, I fell silent. However, my in-laws patiently waited for me to speak. Minutes passed, and I recounted everything that had transpired since our marriage and why I hadn't confided in them earlier. They listened without interrupting until I finished. And then, things got like today. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I didn't want to worry you." "I'm sorry." "Well, I understand how you feel, but don't let someone like that get the best of them." "Yes, I'm sorry." Although they were stern, I could feel they were genuinely concerned for me. There was another prolonged silence. Both of them seemed deep in thought, and the atmosphere wasn't one where words could easily flow. After a few minutes, my father-in-law finally broke the silence. "Susan, do you still love Jack?" To be honest, I think Jack will just repeat his behavior. Maybe you should consider a divorce." Beside him, my mother-in-law nodded in agreement. Divorcing Jack. I never imagined his parents would suggest it. True, it might be easier to divorce. But wouldn't he change after all this? My emotions were tangled because I had fallen for him, and even in this situation, I felt conflicted. However, they waited patiently for me to decide. After pondering for a few minutes, I reached my conclusion. I'll divorce him. That was my decision. Even though a small part of me still wanted to believe in Jack, when I really thought about it, he never listened to anything I said. If I went back without divorcing him, he'd probably continue treating me horribly. That's what I felt. My decision seemed to bring relief to both of them. After some discussion, we decided to propose the divorce the next day. Finally, I would be free from Jack. Even though I had hoped for his change until the very end, when the decision of divorce was settled, I felt at ease. The next day, I went to the house, accompanied by my in-laws. When we rang the doorbell, we heard footsteps immediately, and Jack opened the door. Susan. And Mom and Dad. Seeing his parents, Jack visibly looked disappointed. It should have been obvious that I wouldn't return alone so soon after what had happened. We entered the house and sat on the sofa. My in-laws also took seats beside me. Jack, still not apologizing, seemed restless. Watching him, I spoke up. Jack, I want a divorce. What? Divorce? I've thought it over. I don't have the confidence to continue with you. Over time, you'll forget what happened and repeat the same mistakes, won't you? That's not. You sure about that? You haven't even properly apologized. That itself shows you haven't truly reflected. I'm sorry. Jack, startled by my words, quickly apologized, but it was too late. I was no longer willing to forgive him. It's too late now. For everything. Here's the business card of a divorce attorney. From now on, let's discuss the divorce proceedings through this lawyer. With my in-laws on my side, I was able to speak my mind confidently to Jack. Too late. Jack, what were you thinking last night? You didn't even apologize to Susan, and you're surprised when she brings up divorce? If you were truly aware of the severity of your actions, you wouldn't be so shocked. I did something terrible, but I never thought it'd lead to divorce. You never thought it'd lead to divorce? You really have no clue, do you? I could see Jack shrinking back. All his bravado seemed to have vanished. Our relationship ended without him sincerely apologizing even once. By the way, as I was packing my things to leave the house, I asked him, "Why did your attitude change so drastically after we got married? When we were dating, there was none of this." At my question, Jack hesitantly opened his mouth. "I didn't want to be taken for granted, that's all." What? Taken for granted? Did I ever treat you that way when we were dating? No, you didn't. Please keep your wild imaginations in check. It's truly unbelievable. Yes. I understand. I told Jack that and left the house with my in-laws. I would never return here again. I did have an attachment to the house itself, so I felt a bit lonely. I had been staying at my in-laws' house. Being a full-time homemaker with no money, my in-laws had offered me a place to stay. Of course, I was nervous at first. However, over time, I became accustomed to the atmosphere of the in-laws' house, and even found leisure to enjoy handcrafting with my mother-in-law. During that time, Jack, who hadn't completely given up, tried to contact me. However, with my father-in-law intervening through my smartphone, telling him, "We're cutting ties with you," all communication ceased. Jack probably never imagined I'd be living with his parents. Seeing how he tried to sneakily contact me even after the divorce, I realized he still looked down on me. It was the right decision to divorce such a man. I can't thank my in-laws enough for urging the divorce. Now, a year after the divorce, I've started living alone and working part-time, leading a fulfilling life. I felt it wasn't right to depend on my in-laws forever. Though I moved out, I still maintain a relationship with them and continue to rely on them in various ways. Though we aren't bound by blood, my in-laws treated me like real family. Now, my goal is to repay their kindness. I wonder what I could do to make them happy. Today, and every day, I live my life without forgetting the gratitude I owe to my in-laws.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. "Take care." That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.